Here we are, guys, and I am Charles Peter L. Unabia from BA1C. Let us talk about our first topic, which is an introduction to Philippine historiography, sources and the sources. History is one of the things that made us what we have right now. It serves as our foundation, origin, and how we started. So, let us talk about what is history. Well, history is the study of change over time, and the ones that record and wrote our history is called the historians. The studies, sources, analytical techniques, and interpretations that historians used to research Philippine history are referred to as historiography of the Philippines. There are diverse sources of history, including documentary sources, archaeological records, and oral and video accounts. And most of our historical sources are mostly documents, and this refers to handwritten, printed, drawn, designed, and other composed materials. And this includes books, newspapers, magazines, journals, maps, architectural perspectives, paintings, advertisements, and photographs. And there are two general kinds of historical sources, which is the primary and the secondary source. The primary sources refer to documents, physical objects, and oral or video accounts made by an individual or a group present at the time and place being described. While the secondary sources are materials made by people long after the events described and had taken place. Most of the country's historical narratives highlight the heroism of man in different ways, leading to revolts just like the Katipunan, and liberation wars against the colonizers, championing the cause of independence of our country, and spearheading political and economic development. Our country had faced so many challenges, and that challenges made what it is now. And we need to take care and preserve of what our ancestors' heritage for it will not be forgotten and always be remembered. Let's move on to our next topic, the history of the Philippine Islands. For us Filipinos, this is very important to us, for this is what we are and what our ancestors did in the past. The Philippines is an archipelago that has been formed by the volcanic eruption over the centuries. And this archipelago lies near the equator that causes two weathers. Before the other countries discovered this archipelago, there are barbaric ancestors inhabiting this very land and protecting it. In various parts of this island of Luzon are found a number of natives, black in color, both men and women, have woolly hair, and their stature is not very great. Though they are strong and robust, these people are barbarians and have but little capacity. They have no houses or settlements, but wander bands in hordes through the mountain and rough country, changing from one side to another according to the season. And these natives have been living here in our country over 40,000 years ago. And they are also one of the more modern human migration into the Philippine Islands during the Paleolithic period. And now for our third topic, the Manonggol jar. We Filipinos is known for many beautiful and traditional cultures that up until now we still cherish and respect. One of the most traditional and one of the most ancient cultures that our ancestors left for us is the Manonggol jar. And what is this mysterious jar and how it is important to us? The Manonggol jar shows that the Filipinos' maritime culture is paramount, that it reflected its ancestors' religious beliefs. Many epics around the Philippines would tell how souls go to the next life. Aboard boats, pass through the rivers and seas. The three main features of the Manunggal jar is composed of the boat itself, the boat driver, and the soul. This was based on the Austronesian belief wherein the soul of a human separates from the body after death and returns to the earth in another form for the purpose of looking after his or her descendants. It is a secondary burial jar that shows our maritime culture, and also it represents the journey of the soul to the afterlife. In this current era, the most similar idea with the Manunggal jar is the cremation. It is slightly different from a burial, but the concept is most likely the same. For me, even though jar burials is rarely seen nowadays, but there are things that is inspired by it, by the concept of the jar burial. And now, let's talk about the topic, the Laguna Copper Plate. Our country had faced so many cultures, and some of these cultures came from the other country that colonized us decades ago. The Laguna Copper Plate is known as the earliest written evidence of literature of our country that is discovered in the province of Laguna in 1989. The inscription is a document demonstrating of pre-Hispanic literacy and culture, and is considered to be a national treasure. It is currently deposited at the National Museum of Anthropology in Manila. The Laguna Copper Plate is the earliest document that shows the use of mathematics in pre-colonial Philippine society. It is said that it is a national treasure that has a great help in understanding the Philippine history and our early ancestors during the 10th century AD. With this inscription, we can clearly understand what is our history and also what happened in the ancient times that made us and made our history and cultures what they are right now. This inscription is the key on how and what our ancestors' lives are like in the past. Our history is engraved on that very copper plate, and it is very important to us. As long as we have this, our history can be forever be cherished. This next topic is very common for us, and this topic is the duties of the Katipunan of the sons of the people. In the era where our country is being colonized by many other countries, our people, our ancestors proudly fought back and protected our motherland. And they are famously called Kataas-taasan, Kagalang-galangang Katipunan, mga anak ng bayan. And they are the group of brave countrymen that has been formed by a certain man named Andres Bonifacio. And he is also called or known as the father of the Philippine Revolution. And that encouraged our people, our fellow countrymen, to fight for freedom against the Spaniards. In establishing this revolution, Andres Bonifacio established the duties of the Katipunan of the sons of the people. And with these words, every individual that protected our country lived to these very words and kept them going, fighting for our freedom and giving an established future for our generations to come. And now, we are very grateful for the service and hard work that made us and our freedom of today. These duties for me is a great opportunity for us to grow as individuals. Live up to these very words, and you will be a great model for the future generation of our beloved country. Knowing what our heroes did for us to have our freedom is the best thing to teach our future generations. Imagining what happened in the past, I realized that look what we have now. Free from war and peace is all around. And we must take care of what they have given to us. And to the heroes who saved and freed our country from the colonizers, we are truly great and thankful for all. This is a pre-16th century Philippines topic, which is the soul boats, a Filipino journey of self-discovery. Where do we get the rituals that we do on burials? How did it start? And how did it discover? The Soul Boats, a Filipino journey of self-discovery, tells us that how our burial rituals and practices started. We Filipinos cherish our loved ones that passed away, and we have a formal way of giving them burial for them to honor. And our ancestors have been doing burials for decades. And after reading this excerpt, I have realized that our cultures and rituals have been practiced way back. In the ancient times, Spanish missionaries indicate that the disposal of the dead and hollowed out wood has had a long tradition in the Philippines, and it has been developed through time, and that gave us the modern way, but entirely the same burial. The container that they used were ornamented square boxes of either wood or baked clay, or simply slightly deep plates of both high and low fired clay. In a few instances, as in a central Philippine burial cave, a coffin and jar burial were practiced simultaneously. The early name of a coffin, they referred to it as boat coffins or soul boats, for it looked like a boat with a roof. And there is also as old as a burial in a box, and it is the burial in a jar. And yes, it is practiced by our ancestors. And one of these is the Monongal jar, which had been discovered in the Tabon caves of Quezon, Palawan. Our rituals and beliefs that we have now are from our ancestors. Rituals and beliefs are ways to preserve the heritage of our loved ones and ancestors for them to not be forgotten. The next topic is from the 16th to 18th century Philippines, customs of the Tagalogs. And here we are in the 16th to 18th century, where the colonization of our country started. In this timeline, people started to know how governance is done. The Customs of Tagalog, written by Fray Juan de Plasencia, is one of the most important primary source of the Philippine history. It presents to us how our ancestors live, govern, social status, cultures, beliefs, and customs. Ancient Filipinos have chiefs, and they call them their dato. They are the ones that govern and lead the people. And a dato only governs a small number of groups of people, and this territory is called as Tagalog, or now it is called a barangay, where there was a caste system or boundaries between nobles, commoners, and slaves. And it is the most crucial thing, where you need to be a noble to have higher privilege from people whose social status is lower than you. And the nobles is also known as Maharlikas, was called the freeborn people whose privilege enough to have power far exceeds the people with lower social status. The commoners, whom they are called aliping na mamahay, whose duty is to serve a dato or a nobleman, and they live in their own houses and are lords of their property and gold. Lastly, the slaves, who are called the alipin sa gigilera, who serve their master in their master's own house and lands. These people can be sold and forced to work for them to survive. Even in ancient times, there is segregation. Today, it is rarely seen, but there are still people who still do this. But from time to time, we are developing, and we need to help each other and treat every single one of us as equals. This topic is from the 19th century Philippines. Marcelo H. Del Pilar, La Frailocracia, and Aba Ginoong Barya. Marcelo Hilario Del Pilar E. Gatmaitan, the son of Julian H. Del Pilar and Blasa Gatmaitan, who was born on August 30, 1850 in Kupang, Bulacan. Del Pilar obtained his bachelor's degree and law degree in the University of Santo Tomas. He was involved in an anti-friar activity, and he was the one who founded the Diaryong Tagalog on June 1, 1882. He led his anti-friar men in movements in Malolos and also left because of the fear he had. In 1889, Del Pilar left the Philippines and arrived at Spain and continued his writing in La Solidaridad. La Frailocracia Filipina, a work of Del Pilar that is published in Barcelona in 1899, where he criticized the power of the friars in our country, also called for a radical reform in the Philippines. The Aba Ginoong Barya, also a work of Del Pilar that illustrates the greed of the friars in the Philippines. In this poem, he aimed that the corruption of the Philippine society came from the greed of the friars. And the friars are the keeper of the list of residents of the town, and also their signatures had to be seen in all of the financial papers of the said town. The friars also served as mediators who quelled insurrections. So with this, knowing this, they have the power to control the financial aspects of the Philippine society where they rule. And Marcelo H. Del Pilar wants us to understand that we can end fighting and war in a peaceful way. It is not always violence that can settle things. We know that he exposed the evil doings of the friars not by violence. Instead, he wrote books and many more that exposed their doings and thankfully end their doings. This topic is from 1896 Philippine Revolution, entitled Andres Bonifacio's Letter to Emilio Jacinto, April 16, 1897. Andres Bonifacio E. de Castro was known to be the father of the Philippine Revolution. In the wage of war against the Spaniards, two factions of the Philippine Revolution, or the Katipunan, had a rivalry and giving the enemy advantage to overturn the tide of the war. Knowing this, Bonifacio prepared a meeting at an estate house in Tejeros to attempt in creating a new government to unify in under one banner, and failed. After the said controversial meeting happened in Tejeros, Bonifacio sent a letter to Emilio Jacinto, one of the high-ranking officers of the Katipunan. The letter is about the situation of the war. Corruption and rivalry is the worst thing to experience, and it can cause great damage. The Katipunan had experienced this, and it led to serious damage to the revolution and the country. Corruption is not the only thing that the revolution encountered. They also encountered insubordination that caused them to lose some of their protected lands. And with this, the Spaniards gained the tide of the war. Helping each other can be a great thing to do in these times of crisis.
Find the real